Hi there, Redneck Preppy with you, and today we're going to take a short and convoluted look at the history of this Czech VZ-44 flare gun, or perhaps more accurately, at the history of the flare gun that was responsible for the VZ-44, the SPSh-44. I will grant you not the usual fodder for my short and convoluted history series, but I thought you might be interested in something that was fairly easy to find, relatively inexpensive to buy, and perhaps most importantly for some people, this is not a firearm. This is actually classed as a flare gun, and pretty much anybody can buy one of these, Canada or the United States. So in recent years, the military surplus market has been flooded with identical looking flare guns from Warsaw Pact countries like Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Bulgaria. It was even manufactured under license in China and known as the Type 57. Now, as you can probably surmise, if several countries are producing an identical bit of military gear, particularly when all of those countries are of the same military or philosophical bent, chances are that there's a single country that's responsible for the original design. And you would be correct. Although several countries manufactured this flare gun, it was actually a product of the Soviet Union. It was designed during World War II by Georgy Semyonovich Shpagin, most famous for the iconic SPSh-44 submachine gun, which is still in use today with irregular military units, and he was a co-designer of the DSHK heavy machine gun, again, still in use today. Guy had some bones as a military designer. Now, Shpagin was born in 1897 in a small city, or town, perhaps more accurately, in Klyshnikovo in the Russian Empire. In 1909, he began working as a carpenter, and that would be the age of 12. And finally, he was drafted in 1916 to fight in the First World War. The following year, he was assigned to repairing field artillery. Now, following the October Revolution, which brought the communists to power, Shpagin became a member of the Red Army and was a gunsmith and later designer with the military. And he worked with no less than Vladimir Grigorievich Fedorov, probably most famous for the Fedorov automat, and Vasily Degtyaryov, who was the lead designer of the DSHK heavy machine gun. Now, it was this assignment at the Vladimir Oblast, which saw the 1938 release of the DSHK and the 1941 release of the SPSh-41. So, how do you follow designing an incredible submachine gun that's beloved by everyone? You get tasked to redesign a new flare gun. So, when the Soviet Union was invaded by the Germans in 1941, they had been using a flare gun, which at that point had been introduced in service back in 1930. Now, the 1930 flare pistol worked just fine, but the Soviets faced a severe production issue with a number of weapons, and were basically looking to reduce costs and complexity wherever they could. So Shpagin was tasked of creating a new flare gun, which he ended up coming up with in 1943. Now, the following year, a little bit more refinements were made to his design, and it eventually was introduced into service as the SPSh-44 flare gun. Now, I'd like to say that there was some drama surrounding the flare gun, intra-service battles, and Stalin himself weighing in on what the design was. Really, that was it. They gave him the assignment. He designed the flare gun. Enough. That's it. The end of story. It ended up doing the job just fine. So after the Second World War and the creation of the Warsaw Pact, the SPSh-44 was licensed and manufactured to several countries, which included Poland and Czechoslovakia, the two most common countries of origin that you're going to tend to find these pistols in on the military surplus market. Now, this pistol here has the 1982 date code that you can see right here. The SPSh-44 remained in service with the Soviets until 1981, when it was replaced by the SP-81, which also uses 26.5 millimeter flares, as this one does. Now, as for the other countries where it was known as the WZ-44, it was produced from 1944 to 1978. Czechoslovakia saw production from 1952 to 1983. And China produced the flare gun from 1957 into sometime in the 1970s. We're not entirely sure. One side note, you sometimes hear the SPSh-44 being referred to as the Kovrev Arsenal flare pistol. So now a little bit about the technical details for this flare gun. It does feature a smooth bore, as you would imagine, since accuracy for these things is generally defined as a broad direction rather than a specific thing. And it utilizes 26.5 millimeter flares. Here is an example. It's obviously red colored. Now, to insert the flare, you move this lever forward and it breaks open. Now, I'm going to use a chamber insert in lieu of an actual live flare for obvious reasons. You insert it in, close it back up, and you pull back the single action hammer. It's now ready to fire. To empty the gun of fired flare, you just simply break it open again and withdraw. Now, there really isn't much in the way of a safety. A trigger safety was present on the original 1943 model, but it was removed in 1944. But the only real safety mechanism is a lug right here that acts upon the firing pin in case it's protruding, and it pushes it back in just in case, so that you don't accidentally set off a flare while you're closing the gun. Outside of that, not much to see. You got yourself some Bakelite grips here. The original Russian ones were manufactured with wood grips until after the war when they moved to plastic. Here you can see the serial number and the date of manufacture, which is 1982. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know what this SHE stands for. So if you do know, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. It weighs about 2 pounds and it's 8.7 inches in length. Now, as for production numbers, I've never come across any, so I have no idea how many of these were manufactured by the respective countries, but considering the number for sale, I'd have to think a fair number were produced. Now, I don't own them currently, but along with the pistol was issued a holster, not surprisingly a rather large one, that had a bore brush and rod that came with it. The holster did have some slots as well that you could store flares for future use. At any rate, I hope you enjoyed this brief history of the SPSh-44 in the guise of this VZ-44, although really they are essentially exactly the same thing. This is one of those unglamorous parts of military surplus that doesn't attract many collectors, although the ones who are into flare guns are really into flare guns. So if I've made any mistakes in this video and you're watching, I apologize. Be polite in the comments. If you found this video to be vaguely interesting and informative, feel free to subscribe to the channel for future videos like this and give the video a like. You also find links to my social media platforms in the description below. I hope you have a great day and may all of your shots, even the flares, ring true. Take care.